Welcome to the world of real entertainment. You are about to experience The Legend Lives On, the final volume of All the King's Men, a revealing look into the private life of Elvis Presley. Enjoy the show. The world remembers Elvis Presley as the king of rock and roll, but he was much more to 5 loyal friends. Cousin Billy Smith, teenage companions Lamar Fike, Marty Lacker, Red West, and Red's cousin, Sonny West. Because of their fierce devotion to Elvis, the 5 became known as the Memphis Mafia. Closer than brothers, they served Elvis as trusted confidants, court jesters, and tireless protectors. Join them now for the provocative, hilarious, moving, and endlessly fascinating tales of All the King's Men. Here for the first time on video. In his final years, the quality of Elvis Presley's performances declined along with his health. When those closest to him suggested that heavy drug use was ruining his life, Elvis turned a deaf ear. Among his most vocal critics were longtime confidants Red and Sonny West. In 1976, both were fired. The final chapter for Elvis began after Red and Sonny released a tell-all book, warning the king that he was on the brink of destruction.
When he found out that they were doing a book, he went totally berserk. I mean, ranting and raving like a wild man. He would go through mood changes that you wouldn't believe. He would get over here and say, "Them dirty son of a bitches, I'll have them killed, so help me." He said, "If they even think they can get by with destroying my career," he said, "I'll kill them." It wouldn't be 30 minutes later, he said, "God, why?" He said, he said, "These were my group. I loved them. Why are they doing this to me?" I listened, and finally he said, "What do you think?" That was my opportunity. I'd listened to this shit for days, man. I mean, it was the same old thing over and over, and I had listened to it for days. And when he finally got to that point, which I knew he would sooner or later, I sat him down, I said, "Look," I said, "first of all," I said, "you got to realize, Elvis, that you fired them. They're out in the cold." I said, there's a big world out there. I said, "They don't understand." I said, "Because they got nowhere to go except for pounding the pavement and looking for a job." I said, that's all they got on their mind right now. And they're thinking, how could he do this to us? And so they're getting back at you, literally. And he would break down and he'd start crying. He said, "Man," he said, "don't they realize?" He said, "How many times have I fired him?" He said, "Don't they realize I take them back?" He said, "Don't they realize that?" I said, "No, they don't." I said, "Every time we was fired, believe it or not, we didn't know. We just literally didn't know if you'd take us back or if it was going to be just a temporary thing or if it was going to be from here on out." I said, "When you weed somebody out," I said, "you got a way of doing it. And it stands." I said, "Either they come back shortly or they're just gone." And I said, you can never get to you. I said, your group was that tight. Man, he would just, like I say, and then the next day he would think about it and go right back into the same thing over and over and go to ranting and raving and then turn right around. He had like I say, he had these mood changes that was unbelievable.
His mood swings, weight gain, and continued abuse of prescription drugs were a tragic prophecy of how Elvis Presley's life would end. The news of his passing on August 16, 1977, has been etched forever in the memories of those who loved him.
I was leaving my office, and as most people do, my radio was still on so that when you turn the key, it automatically comes on. And as I turned the key in the car, all I heard was, "Lee is dead," and then they went right into one of his songs. And I said, "No, that's a coincidence. Or if that's what he's talking about, I bet it's Another one of those damn rumors. Well, as soon as the record was over, the disc jockey said, "The king in rock and roll, ladies and gentlemen, as we had just mentioned, Elvis Presley has died. Elvis Presley is dead." The moment he said it, I was just like stunned. I don't know what happened to me at that moment, but my car started heading for a pole on the curb. I jerked it back and speeded home, and as soon as I turned the corner, my wife and my oldest daughter were out in the street looking for me because they knew I was coming home, and they were just in tears, just crying. They were screaming at me, you know, is it true, is it true? And I said, I don't know, let me go in the house and call. So I went in to the house and called Graceland, and one of the guys answered, and I said, what is going on? And his first words to me is, Marty, he's gone. I just froze, you know. You know, hearing it from them, you know, I knew it was true, and I really didn't know it. You know, my eyes started to well up, and he said, I gotta go for a minute, and he handed the phone to Lamar, and I said, Lamar, what happened? And he says, hey, you know, he died. I started crying. You know, I'll never forget Lamar saying to me, cut that shit out, we got enough of that here. And I said, yeah, but, you know, I loved him. And he said, we all do. And I said, Lamar, I can't talk no more. And I hung the phone up.
I walked in that house, and it was just, boy, it was horrible. I just, you know, one thing after the other, it really became, I remember when Colonel told me my ears started ringing. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't hear. Everything started just sort of, you just couldn't believe it.
Well, all I knew is I wanted to get as far away from my home as I could. And there wasn't no way, you know, I had to stay, but that was in my mind. I just had to get away. The next few days were really, you know, really tough. They really were.
We didn't know it, but Elvis was already dead. Judy and I we had an Arabian mare that we had got, and a good friend of ours, Dr. Cohen, had this beautiful, beautiful stallion. So we went over there, and Dr. Cohen comes running out of the house, and I had given him a book 2 or 3 weeks earlier when we got him, and he had read the book. He come out saying, Sonny, you're not going to be a millionaire, you're going to be a zillionaire. And I looked at him, and I said, Elvis died. He said, yeah, didn't you know? I said, oh, God, man. I let go of the horse, I fell to my knee, and I bawled like a baby. I could only think of the good things that he had done. Nothing bad, all good.
I was working on Black Sheep Squadron. We were rehearsing the scene, Robert Conrad and myself, and Chuck Courtney, the stunt coordinator, had been out in the trailer listening to the radio, and he come running in there and said, man, I just heard that Elvis Presley died. And I don't know how to describe it, you know. I expected it when I left. I knew it was coming, but when I heard it, it hit me like a ton of bricks, you know. And I said, well, that's it, I can't rehearse. You know, I went outside and I went off by myself. And Conrad, something you never do, the show must go on. We stopped shooting for almost half a day, and everybody just sit there. But I remember in a few minutes, my wife came over. We lived close by the set. My wife and my sons came over. They were crying, and we got together and hugged each other, just held on to each other. And like I said, it was, I knew it was coming, but I wasn't ready for it. Yeah. And, you know, all these things flashed through my mind back from the time we met and till the end.
In the early years of Elvis Presley's celebrity, complex bonds were beginning to form that would tie the Memphis Mafia together with Elvis for more than 20 years. But in the beginning, Elvis and the King's men pursued a simple and common goal: to have fun wherever they could find it.
We had some funny things happen when we were dating. We met 2 girls, and I lived in Hurt Village at this time, and just my mother and myself. My mother had this little single bed and a bad back to go with it, so she had a big piece of plywood that she put between the mattresses, which made the bed extremely heavy anyway. And my room was across the way, had a big, nice bed. So Elvis and I brought our dates over. This is where we could get away from everybody. And he went to my mother's room, and I went to my room. And anyway, a little while later, I heard this crash. You know, it sounded like the house was coming down. And me and the lady I was with went running over there in semi-dress, and there he and his date are on the floor. The bed is broken, the plywood is split, and they're just dying laughing. Buck. And I said, y'all all right? He said, yeah, but your mama's bed ain't worth a shit anymore. Some funny stories that went on in those early days. Elvis always liked fireworks. Every holiday, no matter where he was, we'd stop on the side of the road somewhere and have a fireworks shootout with Roman candles. Well, he went out and bought a big, huge box of fireworks, rockets, Roman candles, everything.
I had Roman candles one time. We were having a Roman candles fight, and I was aiming at boy, and all of a sudden 3 or 4 of the balls come out the back end and hit me. Fired in reverse, and it just burned a hole in my clothes, my chest, and everything. It scared me to death.
Well, one time, all the wives were inside this glass, you know, what is now
the jungle
room. They're all sitting in there watching the boys out there with all these fireworks. And one of these things went and hit the side of the house, went up underneath, got somehow lodged up in the wall. And we were up there shooting, and we kept looking inside, and the place was getting smoky. In there where the wives were.
You could see the people?
We could see the wives in there, you know. And we kept watching, and finally they come flying out of the house, you know, and the house was on fire, right out front. And Elvis said, Sonny, put that fire out. Okay, boss. We're still shooting fireworks and rockets. Sonny got a sledgehammer, and he knocked a hole this big in the side of Graceland, and there's a fire there. He got the hose and put it out, and we never slowed down, you know, never slowed down. There were the movies on some nights and the bumper cars at the fairgrounds. He'd rent the whole fairgrounds at night when it's closed. We'd ride these things all night. You know, there was always competition. Head on, you know, and you weren't supposed to hit head on in those things in the regular hours. Well, all the rules were out. And you're riding all night with this electric thing, you know, it's like an electric trolley car. You just got to make a connection. Sparks are flying, and this metal dust is coming up. And every morning when we got home, your nose was caked with black, your face was black, but we would knock the hell out of each other all night long. You know, we were a little younger then. And we did this every night.
We're paying the price now.
Yeah, we're paying the price now, right. But we had fun. This was back in the early days, and he was looking for all kind of ways to have fun, and we had it.
Elvis Presley especially loved the times he spent in his blue Hawaii. Surrounded by his tight-knit group of close friends, Elvis saw the islands as a place to escape from the crushing pressures of his professional life. Priscilla accompanied Elvis on this trip, which was documented by Memphis Mafia member Lamar Fike. The vacation was an effort to give Elvis some much-needed rest before starting his 1968 comeback TV special. While pleasurable, Elvis's trips to Hawaii were infrequent. Most of his recreation took place at Graceland, Hollywood, or Las Vegas. The Memphis Mafia was always part of the fun.
Elvis loved to play football. He wanted to do the things that he didn't get to do in high school, you know. So he started in Memphis. He had the EP Enterprise, and we had some pretty good
Coast City champions in that league.
We had some pretty good football players.
Yeah. He bought uniforms. He bought refreshments. We one time even had cheerleaders. It's the first guy I know. He rented a high school stadium.
Had referees.
Yeah. We had referees.
Professional referees.
Yeah, EP Enterprises. Yeah, before that, it was just us playing football at Beverly Glen at 60,
Beverly Glen
61.
Park on Sunset.
Yeah, and that's when a lot of the actors came down there, like Michael Parks, Pat Boone, Gary
Conrad,
Lockwood,
Bob come down. Yeah.
They came down there, and we just, you know, Ricky Nelson brought a half of UCLA's football team over there with him to play us, and they still only beat us by 1 touchdown. Yeah. And there's a couple of guys on that team that kind of went after Elvis on purpose every time, hitting him even when he didn't have the ball or he wasn't running anything, going in there, and Red took care of him. That guy didn't come back anymore. But it's just one of those things, again, where people are trying to impress themselves at Elvis's expense. That's what people don't understand. He had to have people around him because people were always wanting to prove something about they were better this than them, better that. And he didn't ever try to tell anyone he was better than, even at singing or acting or anything else. He never thought he was better than everybody else, and yet people kept going after him like that. And it really got to be irritating. That's why a lot of times punches were thrown and people were knocked down and drug out.
One game, we were over there playing, and this one guy kept going after Elvis, and ended up, him and Red got in a fight. And just show you the way Elvis was, you know, he'd say, somebody take care of him, somebody take care of him. But when Red had the guy down on the ground, Elvis is leaning down right next to Red's face and, get his eyeballs, Red, get his eyeballs.
Remember that in Memphis, it's the same thing, you know, they bring out some guys from Memphis State to play, you know. It brought out this one guy, you remember, and Elvis was chasing him. He had broke loose, and Elvis was chasing him, and he, before he, you know, made it to the goal, Elvis dove for him to try to touch him. When he did, he broke his little finger. And it was kind of laid up here on his back of his hand, so that kind of ended the game, but we took him to the doctor. And the doctor x-rayed it, set it, put it in the cast. Well, he put the cast up rather high, and Elvis says, Doc, he said, do you think that you could maybe make that cast a little shorter? He said, look, he said, I don't tell you how to sing, don't tell me how to put a cast on. Elvis said, yeah, but said, I have to wear your damn cast, but you don't have to listen to my singing.
I remember that.
For the Memphis Mafia, Elvis Presley was a full-time job. Since Elvis generated excitement wherever he went, the job had its distinct benefits. But it also carried some unusual demands.
I had been in radio for a few years, and I came back to Memphis and worked at a station there, and almost every night Elvis and the guys were at home in Memphis. You know, I'd go up to the house, and we were joking around one night shooting pool, and Elvis turned his back, and it was my shot. He turned his back, and there was a football helmet sitting over on the couch. So when he turned his back, I put the football helmet on and got my head almost down on the green and was going to take a shot. And he turned around and saw that, and he just broke out laughing. Lamar was there, Sonny was there, and I don't remember if the two of you were there. So Elvis had God almighty, he said, looks like a football helmet shooting pool. Like that. And he said, take it off, take the helmet off, I want to ask you something. I want to ask you something. I said, okay. I had not expected this at all. And he said, why don't you come go with us tomorrow? And the next day, they were leaving to do Kid Galahad. I said, what do you mean come go with you tomorrow? I said, you going to Hollywood? He said, damn it, I know where I'm going. He said, that was his way of asking. And at the time, Red and I were the only ones married at the time in the group. And, you know, I had to think of my wife and my daughter. And I looked at him and I said, Elvis, I need to think about it. Now, up to that point, he was in a jovial mood. And as soon as I said that, he threw his pool cue down and went in the other den. There's 2 rooms in the basement den. He goes in the other room. And Lamar, I remember Lamar saying this to me. That was a wrong thing to say. Yeah. So I go in the other room to explain to him, see, because all of that kind of stuff was foreign to Elvis, and he couldn't understand why a young guy had an opportunity to go to Hollywood with him and see all this stuff. And so I walk in, and he's got a newspaper in front of his face like this. I mean, he wasn't reading the paper. And I said, Elvis, I need to explain to you why I said that. He didn't move that paper. And I said, you know, I got a wife and a child, and I've got to, you know, just talk to her about it. And I said, I want to go, but, you know, I got to think of them. And so is it okay if I do that? And just then, I guess he realized, you know, what I was saying. And he, instead of putting the paper down, he slid the paper down like this. And he looked up at me and he said, well, don't take too damn long to decide. We're leaving at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. If you're going, you better have your damn bag back up. And put the paper back up. And the next day, I was there with my bags.
We were on call 24 hours. That's what people don't understand.
But see, the wives knew it. When they met us, they knew that we were on.
Air Command. You were on call all the time.
They didn't understand the tie that he had on us.
Yeah,
They just
nobody understood
can never
that.
understand that.
And to this day, people don't understand it. And sometimes we don't.
Our
It's
own
just,
wives
you know,
were not, including Priscilla, our own wives were not into how the hold he had on us guys.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Throughout the 1960s and early 70s, Elvis became more and more dependent on his close-knit group. As fiercely loyal caretakers and personal confidants, those around Elvis were required to be on call for the King 24 hours a day.
When we came back from doing Jailhouse Rock, we had just moved into Graceland. And Elvis said, look, he said, I have nightmares. He said, you know what? I said, I've already been through one of them in Hollywood. And he said, well, just come on up there and stay with him. So I went up there, and he had, you know how enormous that king-size bed he had up there, probably the biggest king-size bed I'd ever seen in my life. And so I slept on the right-hand side of the bed, and Elvis slept on the left, and we had a lot of space between us. And about, I guess it was probably 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and I heard this talking, and it was pitch black in that room, and how dark we kept it. And I said, what is that? And all of a sudden, I got hit in the jaw. Pow! And I said, and I'm going, good, what is it? I'm trying to get to a light, man. He's hit me on the back of the head, man. I'm crawling to the light. I got to the light, turned the light on, and he saw me start laughing. I said, what are you doing? He said, I thought you were somebody attacking me.
If he were sleepwalking and you grabbed him, he was going to hit you.
Well, but, you know, one night he got up, I was at the end of the bed, and he took the whole cover, and he was standing up in the middle of the bed with it going around his head like this, you know, and I'm going, what are you doing, you know? Well, I'm on my hands and knees trying to get to the light, man. I'm crawling my hands, and he took that whole cover and threw it over me and jumped on top of me and started hitting me in the back again. And I told Billy, I said, I'm not in there anymore. I'm out of here. I said, I'm not going to sleep in there. I said, it's hazardous duty. I said, I'm not going to get up there and put up with that, you know, because he would just go bananas.
Well, we were in Nashville when he recorded Heartbreak Hotel. We stayed at the hotel while he recorded. And that night, I sat up because we were up on the third or fourth floor. And I sat back, I put my back to the window and sit there all night, you know, because like you, I spent the night with him when he lived on Lamar and lived on Getwell, and I've seen what you're talking about.
Listen, you know, he would go to sleep, Elvis would go to sleep with his, you remember this? He'd always put his hand over his eyes like this, you know, and you didn't know if he was awake or asleep. And all of a sudden, why, son, I'm telling you, I couldn't even clear my throat to try to get to the vein. It'd scare you to death, because you didn't know if he was asleep or awake. And his temper, you know, when he got like, there was somebody attacking him, always in his dreams. You know, when you sit and think about what it was, and that's why he was up in the middle of the bed slinging that cover around, because he said he thought it was a baseball bat, and he was slinging it around, and it was all that cover.
The men closest to Elvis experienced both his legendary generosity and fearsome wrath. As Elvis became more dependent on drugs, they had to deal with his erratic behavior and increasing need to control those around him.
There was times he was down on each one of us, and times that, you know, so it back and forth. And when you were up, man, you were as close to him as anyone could get. And when you were down on his list, you were as far as you could get. We were up at the house and on Perugia Way, and Tuesday Well came up, and she brought a friend with her, girlfriend. So Elvis and Tuesday were talking. The girl was named Kay, and I went over and was talking to her at the bar, you know, just sitting there, having a drink, talking to her and everything. And after a little while, Elvis walked by, and he said, "Damn, you're cute." And he reached over and gave her a little peck on the cheek. And she smiled and said, "Well, thank you." And he went on into his bedroom for a little bit, and he came back out and went back over and sat down, and we're still talking. And then a few minutes later, Elvis comes back over there. Now, he's drinking this night, and he came back over, and then he really laid a kiss on her. And she put those arms around him, and I said, "Whoa." I got up off the stool, and I went over, sat down next to Alan and Tuesday at a little table there. And Alan said, I said, "Yeah." I said, "Really?" And Tuesday said, he's something, isn't he? You know, like that. And then it didn't bother her either. It didn't upset Tuesday. Didn't upset me. I mean, I'd just been talking to her. So then I get up and I go over to Gene, and Gene's sitting on the couch, and I leaned down. When I sat down, I leaned over to him. I said, "Gene," I said, "if you had your choice between Tuesday and that girl, which one would you take?" He said, "Tuesday, man." I said, "Me too." Well, Elvis saw me talking to him. And all of a sudden, from across the room, he asked me, "What'd you say, Sonny?" Well, I couldn't tell him what I said. That's embarrassing. I'm asking, "Do you want to make it with Tuesday or her?" So I said, "Oh, nothing. I was just talking to Gene." He said, "Damn it." I said, "What did you say?" He said, "You gonna tell me what you said? I'm gonna bust you with this bottle." And he had a Pepsi bottle in his hand. And I stood up and I said, "You're not gonna hit me with no bottle." I said, "I'm out of here, man. I quit. You're a Gestapo tactic. That's over with." And I started out. Well, the Pepsi bottle somehow wasn't in his hand when he came around. He stopped me from leaving to walk to the living room. I said, "I'm out of here. I quit." "Can't quit. You're fired." I said, "Whatever." And then he got around in front of me and started yelling at me. And I yelled back, and all of a sudden he drew back and hit me. And it knocked my head to the side and everything. I turned back around, and literally tears came to my eyes. I said, "Elvis, I never thought you could do that." And I was crushed. I really was. And I walked. And I was getting my stuff packed, man. I'd called a cab, and he came in and said, "Sonny, what's going on here?" I said, "Well," I said, "I don't know, man. You've changed this year. You're not the same person I met in '58. You're not the same person I went to work for a year ago." I said, "I don't know what you're doing, but you're just not the same." He said, "All right." He said, "I'm the same, Sonny." He said, "I just thought you were saying something about..." I said, "Elvis, why am I going to put you down or say something about you?" And he couldn't apologize. He couldn't say, "I'm wrong, I was sorry." He said, "You need any money?" I said, "No, I got money." He said, "Well," he said, "where are you going? You need the boys take, one of the guys take you?" So I said, "No, I got a cab coming." He said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going over and stay tonight with a friend." He says, "You sure you don't need any money?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I'll have Daddy send out 2 weeks' pay for you, you know, a couple of checks here." I said, "Well, okay." And I said, "If it's all right, I'll wait to get the rest of my stuff." And I left. And he was standing there at that door, that cab, as I pulled away. He was the only one standing there, and I was really hurt. He left there to make the picture follow that dream. So I didn't see him till he came back out to do the stuff that he needed to do at the studio. And I went over and saw him. Everything was fine. I worked on the picture. And I guess a few months later, I went back to work for him for a while. He went home. I said, but it just, that was the time that really, that I really thought that I didn't think someone like that could ever do that. And Red said, man, he's glad I didn't, because Elvis, you know.
Yeah, that's happened to just about all of us at one time or another. He could never apologize to anybody. He would apologize.
He could say, I'm sorry, or thank you.
And he never
He said it to me once.
He did?
He and I had a bad argument based on what his father had told him, because my brother-in-law and sister decorated a lot of stuff at Graceland, and Elvis really loved it. And Elvis had told my brother-in-law to his face, he said, look, you deal with me on this, because Vernon and Elvis's tastes were a whole lot different, plus, you know, cost-wise. So he said, if you got anything you need to talk to me about, call Marty, he'll talk to me, and he'll give you my answer, which is basically the way it was in. Well, Vernon didn't like that. So he started making up a whole bunch of stuff, you know, about my brother-in-law and sister. And the fact, you know, and I'm not going to dwell on this, he was anti-Semitic and made a whole lot of comments about that to my family, including my mother. So we got back from California, and they had just finished redoing his bedroom upstairs, and Bernie, my brother-in-law, and Elvis always had this little ritual about like Michelangelo. You know, you can't see it until it's finished. So they had a big ceremony when they opened up the double doors upstairs, and Elvis saw the bedroom, and for some reason it touched him so much, his eyes started tearing up. His father was standing there. His father hated it, that he loved it. And, you know, everybody was saying, you know, what a great thing it was, and Elvis, you know, just couldn't get over it. So we all leave that night, and I come back this next afternoon thinking he's going to be in a good mood. Well, I walk in, he's sitting there with his father. And boy, he starts in cussing my family, cussing my mother, cussing my father. And he never saw them except every once in a while when we lived up there, they came up, and he loved, you know, my mother to bring him chicken soup and all that stuff. And boy, it flew all over me. And I told him where he and his father can go and what they can do to themselves. And I stomped out of the house. And I went home to my apartment and stayed for 4 days, blown out of my skull on sleeping pills. And on the 4th day, I finally came out of it a little, and I said, because I was hurt. And I said, well, I'm going to go back up there just to see what the relationship is and see if I get in. So I go up there, and there's nobody upstairs in the upstairs den, and the maid tells me that they're all downstairs in the basement. I go downstairs in the basement. Elvis and his father sitting on the couch, and he gets up, and his father gets up, and I didn't know how he was going to act. And he said, well, how you doing? I said, and I was in a bad mood. And I said, I'm all right. I'd never acted this way to him before. And he looked at me, and that's when I got the shock. And he says, I'm sorry. He actually said to me, I'm sorry for what I said, and I shouldn't. And I looked at him. I was still mad, and I said, Elvis, you know, I care about you a lot, but don't ever do that again. And I would never say nothing like that to him any other time.
He knew how to push the buttons, and when he pushed them, I mean, I've read myself, Sonny, Marty, Bill, I've seen us all double up. I mean, he's doubled us up in pain because he knew what to do, because we were so loyal. If I ever learned anything in my life, even to this day, I learned loyalty from being around him and this group. And it's always been there.
And to this day, I can't understand that kind of a hold. And I swore after Elvis passed away, nobody'd ever have that kind of hold, except for my wife. I mean, it's a different situation. But nobody'd have that kind of power over me again. You know, I mean, it's because I could not explain it. And I don't think any of the rest
None of us can. Judy and I were going to get married, and Elvis, we were going to get married back in Memphis. And we weren't planning to get married at that time because we were saving up our money to get married. And making the money we did, it took a little while to save it up. We'd been going together for 2 years. And Elvis decided that he was going to get us married and that he was going to pay for it. Don't worry about it. So he turned it over to Marty, which I'm very glad, because Marty's a very good detail man about things, and he just told Marty, you handle it, set it up and everything, and Red and the other guys, Charlie, all of them were my, they were ushers and everything involved, all in the wedding and everything. So we go down there, when this is all set up, Marty got the church, and the pastor that was going to marry us was Reverend Billy Smith. Not this Billy Smith, but another one. And so we're back in the back there, and Elvis got this dark suit on, and he's got these sunglasses, and yeah, and he's sitting there, and when the pastor's there talking to me for a minute, and Elvis, damn, it's hot, you know, and the gun's underneath there. And I went, you know, we're in church, and I looked at it like that, and he just pulled his coat back closed again. He's wiping my brow, I'm sweating, but not for being married, I'm just sweating the whole situation, man. I don't know what's going on. Elvis was in one of those moods, you never knew when he was going to do something, you know?
Oh, wait a minute. Let me interrupt you.
Okay. You probably remember more of it than I do.
Yeah, the three of us were in that back room, in the preacher's room. And Elvis had this big black Kell flashlight.
Yeah, he had the
police flashlight. So they came back there and said, it's time. So Elvis and Sonny start walking out, and Elvis has still got the flashlight in his hand. He's gonna carry it up to the altar. Well, I start taking the flashlight out of his hand, and he starts pulling back on it. And he said, what are you doing? I said, Elvis, you can't go up there on the altar carrying that flashlight. He said, hell, I can't. And I said, Elvis, it's Sonny's wedding. It's a wedding. You know, you don't want to do this. Enough he had the guns on him. And finally, I start pulling on the flashlight, and he let go. But he went up on the altar with Sonny loaded with guns on both sides.
Despite his worldwide fame, Elvis always needed to be the center of attention. Whether at public appearances or at home with his close friends, Elvis craved the limelight.
Elvis just hated rejection from people he cared for. He could not stand it, boy.
Yeah. Remember, we'd have parties. We would have parties among the guys, and we would invite Elvis. But the reason we wouldn't, because he would just monopolize the party. I mean, he'd come in and he'd go sit over there, and everybody gathered around him. We stood over there like a bunch of fools. And he got so mad at us for doing that. I said, look, you take the party over. And then he'd take it, then he'd want to move the party somewhere else. I said, the party's going to be here, not there.
It hurt his feelings. He thought that we were wanting to be without him, and it wasn't that at all.
No, we just did.
Most time he wouldn't go. You'd say, well, he said, no, y'all go ahead, I'll wait here.
And then as the years went by, little by little, and the way he started to get not wanting to do stuff, he said, I ain't gonna do nothing this New Year's Eve. So we all wanted to be together New Year's Eve. So I had a house close to Graceland in Whitehaven, and my wife and I just said, hey, let's have it over my house. So everybody came over and brought, the wives cooked different dishes and stuff, and we didn't even bother to tell them about it. No, take that back. We did tell him about it, but he said, I didn't want to go. So everybody came over, and we were all sitting there having a great time, smoking and talking and doing stuff, you know, and just reminiscing and having a great time amongst ourselves. And all of us assumed, you know, that he was just going to stay at Graceland, he and Linda Thompson. Not even a knock on the door. He just walks in the house, him and Linda and Vernon and Dee, and they're standing up there, and he's got this towel wrapped around his neck again, and he's looking. The look on his face, I'm sure everybody caught it, is, you guys are having a good time without me. I know I've never met anybody like him in my life, and, you know, we've been in the presence of a lot of celebrities and what have you, and there were stars, okay? But he was a little bit above him, and it was amazing how his, whatever you want to call it, magnetism, or charisma, it's almost not charisma because it would affect people before he even opened his mouth. You know, that's why I say magnetism, or sometimes I refer to it as magic. when people get in his presence, you know, I've seen, and we all have seen people, we've seen celebrities, you know, talking like they're something else and blah, blah, blah. And Elvis walks in a room, and boy, the atmosphere changes, including in the eyes of the celebrities. They look upon him as, they felt something strange. And one more story, Sonny. Yeah. I'll tell you how strange it was. In the house at Graceland, in what people now call the jungle room, it's upstairs den. Other than coming in the back door, to get into that room, you have to come down some steps from the kitchen. Well, the couch, the way it's situated, the back of the couch is to those steps. And we could...
It had a thing behind the petition.
And we could be sitting on the couch. Elvis not in the room. We can be sitting on the couch talking, and he can come in from the kitchen down the steps, and there's thick carpet. You didn't hear him, but you knew he was in the room. It was just like a sensation that you had, and you knew he was there.
Today, Elvis is recognized as an icon who defined a generation. His numerous impersonators are a phenomenon as unique as the King himself, and have become a continuing legacy of Elvis's life and music.
When it comes down to the bottom line, it's a tribute to Elvis that there's that many of them around the world that emulate him and do things, and the people do pay to go see these. Now, it's for memories or for them to rethink it, you know, that how it was the first time they saw Elvis sing such and such song. And that's what a lot of them explained to me. He said, I look at him, I listen to it, and it's like in my mind, it's like when I was there with Elvis when he was performing. So, you know, it's a tribute to him and the estate at one time, which good, they were about to make a big, bad mistake, starting to control this and stop it. And someone wise up there, wiser than the rest of them, said, hey, you know, you may not know this, but this is keeping the memory of Elvis alive.
The legend also lives on in public appearances by the Memphis Mafia. Ever loyal to Elvis, they share their memories with fans, still hungry for a glimpse of life with the King.
I'm just thrilled that I was able to meet him, but the biggest thing of all is I would not take $100 million for my years with Elvis, because I am part, through him, of history that I didn't know I was a part of at the time.
Elvis was the greatest entertainer that ever lived or ever will live, as far as I'm concerned. Think about the good things that Elvis did, which were numerous for everybody. And he was a good-hearted guy, and he was just I think a kid in a man's body that couldn't handle the celebrity, and it finally got him, but he did a lot of good while he was here.
In the end, 5 lives have been bonded together by the music and personality of one man.
He was the glue that held us all together. There were so many, I mean, like I had said this earlier, the good far outweighed the bad. Not think of them, maybe not every day, you know, but you hear songs and you know he could have sung the hell out of them. I see comedians and hear jokes and think of how we would all, you know, think it was funny. I picture us just falling on the floor laughing, him included.
Every day, in 20 years almost since he died, think about him in one way or another, or somebody will call me about something, wanting this, that, and the other. And it's funny, I see some of these, one comedian in particular that I won't mention, I watched him one day, and whenever I hear anything cruel about him, I could kill that son of a bitch, just said it, because they don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know the guy, how good he was to everybody. Yeah, I think about it, and I will till the day I die.
The thing about him, he was such a part of our lives, you know. He was just everything with you, and he was always with you, and it was one of those things where we you know, we just, everything, I guess outside of my father, he was the closest thing I had. And when we lost him, we sort of all lost part of ourselves. We never, ever recovered.
Something connects with you every day about him. It's, you see a movie or something, you think, God, Elvis would have really loved this. Or you hear a new singer and you think, boy, he would really have loved like Mariah Carey, you know. And it's just, it's something that you're never gonna be rid of it. When you're as close as we were to this guy and the things that he did for us over the years, it just, it's something that you will all take to the grave with us. It's something I don't ever want to get away from it as far as that. I don't want to continually talk about it necessarily, but I've got these thoughts and memories in my heart, in my mind, and I'll hold on to them.
You know, I've always heard the expression, if you die and you got 5 friends, you know, you're pretty lucky. We're all pretty lucky.